Three of my friends this summer, my friend Megan, my friend Bot, where are you? My friend Bot and my friend Gabe decided to go for a hike. They showed up to my house, and this couple-hour hike turned into an all-day adventure. Instead of going somewhere nearby in the foothills or somewhere close to my house, my friend Gabe decided we go to Estes Park. So, seeing that we had a long car ride ahead of us, we decided to listen to music, play games in the car, and get to know each other even better. When we got to Estes Park, we decided on a hike that ended in a lake. These are, on our hike, it was not very hard, so we could talk to each other, we could take breaks. We had nowhere to be at a certain time, so we could be with each other. Along the time, we were able to go by the stream. We got to play in water, skip rocks, sit by the water, eat snacks, and be together. At the end of our hike, we got to the lake. Next slide. We got to a lake. And in that lake, we got to jump in this ice-cold water. Because why not? We all wanted to do it. And we forced our friend Megan to go in there when she was shivering cold 3 times in this cold water. We didn't want our hike to end there, so we decided to keep going. So along this line, we got to walk around this lake and decided up here that we were going to climb this waterfall. And that's exactly what we did. While we hiked, we were able to laugh, joke, trip, and climb over these large rocks. We were freezing cold, our shoes were wet, but we had fun because we were with each other making memories. We decided on taking advantage of being with each other. We focused on each other and not anything else. We didn't have to be anywhere or see anybody, and we were just living in the moment, being with each other. After the hike, we still wanted to be with each other and didn't want it to end. We got to look over the valley and look at what we had just done. We didn't have our phones. We had our phones just for pictures, but we were on social media. We weren't calling. We weren't texting anybody else. We were just there with each other. We decided that we still wanted to explore Estes Park, so we got to eat dinner, we got to eat ice cream, and walk around Estes Park together. This couple of hours turned into a 12-hour day. And after, I'm able to look back at these pictures, and so is Megan, and we can look at these memories we made together, highlighting it and making it my favorite part of my summer. It was unexpected and spontaneous, and I hope we do something like that again. It taught me about relationships and what makes friendships grow. While it not be true for everyone, I found that the strongest way to form strong relationships is finding mutual activities to do together, especially outdoors, and sometimes not always having a plan. Not only are my friends important to me, but spending time getting to know people is something that makes me very happy. It brings me joy in my life. When I think about my life, and especially the future, I realize that my passion is for people. I love people of all kinds of backgrounds. I love people who are introverts, people who are extroverts, and everybody in between. And I also love making those introverts extroverts with my own personality. I found the easiest way to form these strong relationships is finding common interests. I realized that my life revolves around these concepts and decided to explore the fields of communication with a specific focus on outdoor leadership. As you know, I am passionate about the outdoors and exploring nature. And I found somebody else who could do that and taught me how to do that well. And that's Mr. Wall. Mr. Wall and I teamed up this fall and got to do an AW experience. An AW Day stands for Outdoor Wilderness Adventure Experience. And this is a day where Mr. Wall gets to take a group of students and take the day off doing something outdoors. This can be snowboarding, hiking, fishing, slacklining, anything outdoors. So why not would I take the day off and do something like that with Mr. Wall? I organized a trip with him and a couple of my friends, but due to complications, it actually ended up only being my friend Matthew, Mr. Wall, and I. We took a hike to Boulder, and it was only us three, making the conversations that more intentional, that more deep, and that more fun. We got to learn more about each other, ask questions that were interests of each other. And I also got to ask Mr. Wall about what he thinks a leader does well, or what a good leader does to lead well. As we were in a group setting, he was talking about a good leader is aware of the group's needs, their passions and abilities in leading well. As a good leader, you have to be flexible, open-minded, and ready for plans to change, like this trip. It was planned on a couple, like 7 or 8 students, but it was only 3. It was a change, but it wasn't a bad change. It actually ended up making my trip awesome. I also got to meet somebody else who has the opportunity to live this out in his career, and his name is Lance Finkner. He and his wife own a company called Venture, and he leads service learning trips. And he focuses on things like adventure, service, and cultural immersion. He organizes trips locally, so he organizes trips with Denver Christian or Anastasis Academy, and these are school learning trips that he takes out of the country or locally. He also was a teacher here locally in Aspen, but he also taught overseas in El Salvador and Hong Kong traveling. Lance works with students of junior high and high schoolers, and I was so excited because, as all of you guys, I know that I lead a D group with you guys, and I get to meet with these girls for an hour a week. I got to make relationships with them, play games with them, learn, talk, and laugh with them. And so I was able to talk to him and ask, what do I do well? What should I do to grow these relationships with these junior hires? Because he has experience with junior hires. And he says that his go-to activity is finding common experience. He wants to comfortably and safely take them out of their comfort zone. And whether you guys know it or not, I try to do that in our group every week. I try to do something that included all of you and try to do something fun. I also try to do things that you guys wouldn't have tried. I encourage you guys to do different things, and I found joy in that. Both Mr. Wall and my friend Lance agreed on things to make a good leader. Things like flexibility, easygoing, not stressing over the little things, making things, just going with the flow. Traveling, getting outdoors. You don't have to travel far. You can go to the foothills, but get outside, climb a tree, do something fun with your friends. Find that common experience. It can be outside, but it also can be inside. Do something fun that both of you like to do. And also encourage others to get out of their comfort zone. Maybe that means you try something new with them and say, hey, let's try this thing together and we'll both figure it out. Or you say, hey, I found that this is awesome. I want you to experience too. And I'll be there with you and be vulnerable and try it with you. After talking to Lance and Mr. Wall, I was able to practice what I'd learned about leadership. I got the chance to co-lead a J-term with Mr. Sutherland and work 5 days with the 7th graders this January. And this consisted of 5 days of a couple hours working with them. And I had organized activities to do every day that had to do with a couple of themes. Themes of unity, communications, cooperations, trust, and problem solving. Every day I asked them questions like, what's one thing you learned about about a classmate? What were things that made you nervous or upset or frustrated during our activities? It was one thing that you recognize that you can use later on in your life, something else in your life. And with those days, with communication, there was a specific game that each team had one person blindfolded, and then the rest of the team had to verbally say, to get across the gym floor without touching, they just had to use verbal communication to get around the obstacle courses from the one side to the other side of the gym. Another day we focused on cooperation and trust. Once again, the students had to get from one side of the gym to the other, but they couldn't touch the gym floor, so they had dots that they tied on with their shoes, and they were really creative on how they did that. There was a couple students giving piggyback rides from giving one student to the other side of the gym. But because when you fell, you had the whole 7th grade had to start over. And how many times we start that over? So many times. But it was fun, and they learned different things about it that day. Another day, we focused on problem solving. This game was more complicated, but everybody was in a circle and they were all holding a string. And in the string, they were all connected to a washer, and on this washer, there was a tennis ball. And each student had to go through the hula hoop around the group, and they had to problem solve. They had to communicate with each other on how to do that well and not let the tennis ball drop. And my favorite day of all was Friday, and it was the Unity Day. In the center of the 7th grade circle, there was a bowl of water and a pile of rocks to the side. And each student, whether they felt led or not, could go up and grab a rock and put it in the bowl. And in the bowl, they could say things that they learned throughout the week, things that there was apologies of people recognizing that they had affected students differently. And there was also things of encouragement of saying, this is what I thought went well this week. And this brought the class together, and it was very fun for me to see the change from Monday to Friday with you guys, 7th graders. And this excited me even more because you 3 and you 2 and you 2 and wherever you are, I get to see you guys all the time. I have those relationships. But I also got to make relationships with other girls not in my D group. And I got to make relationships with the goofy boys in your guys' grade. And now I walk down that hallway and I make jokes about being called Miss Chisholm and hating it, but still laughing and fist bumping Hayden as I walk down the hallway. And you know, we all laugh because we all experience that together, and I love that. I love that I've made those relationships, and I spent those 5 days working with you guys. Not only did I recognize the relationships I had made with my 7th graders, with my friends on the trip, I recognized that my own relationships with my family members and siblings grew. This past spring break, my siblings and my parents and I got the opportunity to go on a cruise to Puerto Rico for a trip. So my 2 brothers, my sister, and my parents went along, came with us, my future brother-in-law, and it excited me because I got to spend this week getting to know him and getting to see what things interest him. He's a firefighter, so I could learn more about that field, and I was able to start making that connection that I will with another brother. So on one of the days, our boat stopped at an island called St. Kitts. And on that island, we got to do a volcano excursion. So my siblings and I said, why not? Let's do this. Boy, was I wrong. This hike was brutal. It was hot. It was long. It was steep. My brother almost died. And the worst part was the locals leading this trip were just bounding up this hill like nothing. It was discouraging. And they kept saying that the hike was going to be over sooner than it was. And it would never end. Christian was dehydrated the whole time. Cass was forcing him to drink water the whole time. But this whole time, we were laughing. My siblings and I were joking around. We were having fun. So it was my siblings and I, but alongside this hike, there was probably 7 or 8 couples, and they were miserable. They were bickering with each other. They were arguing. They were snapping at each other. Alongside my siblings and I were just like laughing, and we were loud too. We just had so much fun doing it, and that's what made it the best part of my trip. And I can say that the same for my siblings. Without expecting it, my relationships with my brothers, my future brother-in-law, and my sister grew. I thought this was strange because I used to live with a lot of them, and we had those relationships, but these relationships grew in a way I wasn't expecting it. In part, I feel that this was a positive change happening to what I'd learned in communications. I got the chance to meet a professor at Northwest Nazarene University and got to talk to her for a couple hours on what she does and what she loves. She says that communication is the process of being effective and efficient in your communicating. We, a lot of the time, focus on our words being said, but we don't always focus on the nonverbal actions, the facial expressions, the body language. And this is why good communicators are natural-born leaders, because they do these things well. Every organization uses people with these skills, whether that's in the oil business or in a school, the faculty, everything like that. There are good communicators everywhere. They're just called different things. They have the same set skills, but they're called different things. Communication is such a broad field. There's things under it like public speaking. There's journalism. There's the film side, mass communications that deals with public relations. And there's stuff on things like leadership, management, and conflict with communication. Communication doesn't always lead you to a specific job, but it leads you to an understanding of the field, an understanding of how to communicate well with people and how to be a good leader. It was awesome to meet with this professor. Her name was Donna, because she got to talk about real-life things that she was going through and things that she had taught to other kids. She was a specialist in this field, so it made me more excited about communications itself. This year, whether I liked it or not, I was supposed to read a book. And I was not excited about this, but it actually was awesome, and it was one of my favorite parts of Capstone. This book was called Keep Your Love On, Connection, Communication, and Boundaries by Danny Silk. Danny uses real-life examples of his life with his own family members of conflict and ways that he was communicating poorly and how he fixed that with communicating well. And this book had not come at a better timing for me. I had read it this last semester, and when I was having conflicts with my siblings or my parents or my friends, and I was saying, why am I communicating wrong? Why am I having conflict with these people? And as I was reading this book, I saw examples that connected completely to me and my situation as well. And it also reminded of the virtues and goals I had set for myself at the beginning of the year. I set goals to grow in compassion, especially sensitivity and selflessness. I looked at this verse a lot this year, Philippians 2:4. Not looking to your own interests, but to the interests of others. I'm not an overly sensitive person, and when people are having feelings or hardships, and I tend to joke about them or to kind of push them away. And I wanted to grow in that, and I wanted to share that. I wanted to share the good times with people, but I also wanted to learn how to share those bad times with people in their times of need. I wanted to be more selfless, and when I looked at myself being less selfish this year, I looked at my mom, and I looked at I know she doesn't like it, but I'm pointing her out. I looked at people in my life that I thought were good communicators, people who were strong and selfless. And I look at her because she thinks before anybody else about other people. Not once does she think about herself. And that encouraged me because I wanted to be like that. I wanted to have the reflex of thinking about other people first and not myself. And I can say that I've grown watching my mom do that this year. After spending time with Mr. Wall, Lance, the Professor Donna, my friends and family, my 7th graders and the 8th graders, I know that I want to be a person that creates an environment that encourages people to unplug, to ask questions, to get to know each other better, to enjoy the outdoors, be intentional with relationships, and just be with each other, living in the moment. So this summer, when someone asks you to go on a hike, maybe you're the one that makes it an all-day adventure.